Do I hit the crazy bitch button? There's so many times during the course of our days where we really need to think about what we're going to say or how we're going to react to things. And there's many times I have to pull myself back and think about what's going on around me. And in order to keep my sense, my peace, as well as my strength, I need to remember how, what, and when I use the word no. Now, when we want to please other people, that's the last word we want to use. We always want to say yes. We want people to like us. We don't want to get in any conflict. But I pose to you that in order to not have conflict or less of it, that we have to use the word no and not worry so much about pleasing other people. Because if we can't please ourselves and be at peace with our own selves and what we're doing and where we're at in life, then we're just going to have a lot of anxiety and live lives that are not fulfilling to us, and eventually maybe turn to certain crutches in order to deal with that anxiety. So when we talk about putting up boundaries, I know that's a lot we hear about, which is very, very important. But there's outside boundaries and there's internal boundaries, and these the marks we want to be aware of. But it's not just about understanding boundaries. You can find that anywhere. What I'm talking about here is knowing how to address your boundaries, and that is done by being assertive. But I pose to you, assertiveness is not just about putting a wall up. Assertiveness is putting a mirror in front of yourself and then reacting or not reacting from what you see. I was reminded when I was talking about this, I was thinking about who is it that reminded me, what lesson, what teacher taught me so well about this. And it was Byron Katie. I always want to say Katie Byron, but it's Byron Katie. And she wrote a lot about the work. It's a very simple concept, but something that is mirrored actually in many spiritual practices, but she just brought it to the secular realm so we could connect to it. And when we perform the work, that's when we take a look at, we put the mirrors on ourselves, on our emotions, on our maybe experiences, and where we're coming from in order to put appropriate assertiveness in place and to guard our boundaries or move away physically from something, maybe physically move toward something. Because sometimes we can actually move away physically from something, but emotionally and internally move closer to it if we put a mirror in front of us. Because Byron Katie teaches us in the work that we ask 4 questions. The first is, I'm going to look, but is it true? So when someone comes at you, whether at work or home, and they're asking you to do something, so let's say at work, someone's asking you, your coworker is asking you to complete something for them, a task. And you look at it and you're like, you're really, really busy. But you say, I think they just don't want to do this. But if you look at it and say, well, is it true? Is it that they don't really want to do it? And you can just take a step back and then think, can you know it's absolutely true? That's the second thing. Is it true that they just don't want to do it? Or Is it you start asking questions, mirror questions. You say, well, could it be that they just have a lot on their plate? Could it be they don't feel confident in doing that task? And then you can think about how do you going to react to that person. So are you going to, this is where assertiveness comes in. How do you react to that? And then look at yourself again in the mirror and say, well, if I react as if they just don't want to do it, what will be your reaction? Versus maybe they just feel, I'm not saying incompetent, but maybe they don't feel confident or competent to do the task. So how you react is important there too. You can react more patiently and kindly. But on the other hand, maybe it is something they just don't feel like doing. They feel that they can just dump it on you, because that definitely happens. And in that case, you can look at it and say, well, who would you be if you didn't have the thought of they're just trying to dump it on me? And that's the fourth phase. Who would I be? So let's just say I probably knew they just wanted to dump it on me. And I say, well, how can I react to that with a mirror without focusing on they're trying to dump it on you or on me? And I can take a step back and say, you know what, this is not threatening to me. This is something that will challenge me as far as scheduling my time. I could maybe learn something new from this task. I could do the task, but I could learn another aspect of performing this task. And I can just do it and check, kudos to me for following through. Following through, showing up and following through are more than half the battle in many times, in many ways. And that coworker will see, oh, well, she just took it with grace and did it. But there's also times when we have to use boundaries in a way, our assertiveness to help respect boundaries, maybe on the road. So when I'm on my motorcycle, sometimes I am the person who, the wing girl, and my job is to protect the captain, to stay close, protect him. And that could be on my bike or at work, or just someone that I am in charge of overseeing, manager. My job is to oversee someone and protect them. Now, in that situation, I have to be very aware of what's around me and how I react to certain situations. So on my bike, I have to make sure that I keep an eye out externally of everything around me and the person that I'm watching over. So I have to stay in synchronicity with that person in order to put the appropriate power and force into what I'm doing. Because otherwise, I leave them open and vulnerable. So I have to assert myself very differently. I have to be very forceful, but cautious, to be aware of everything around me and in control of what I'm doing. And sometimes when something comes up, I have to remember, like a car pulling out or someone trying to pass on the right. I have to remember sometimes, don't get crazy, because I look at a person and I say, are they really trying to harm us when they cut us off or something? And I have to remember, no, they're just in their own mind, in their own world. They don't mean anything towards me. So sometimes I have to back off and let them move in front of us, because they're just not thinking about other people. And it doesn't matter sometimes what phase of life we're in, that we have to allow others just to move past us, and know that sometimes the word no is less about the other person and more about us, in order to be reflective on what we're doing and why we are doing it. Because we don't know what's in someone else's mind. All we can do is put a mirror in front of us and have reflection on how we're going to react to that situation or that mindset. Many times we want to think someone is charging at us, coming at us, but you use more strength and sometimes in letting go of ideas because you want to be right, versus letting go of just letting go of ideas can be much stronger than holding on to an idea or something that we want to be right in. Um, there's less strength in that, just to follow a fleeting thought. So I challenge you, in order to get better at saying no, to reflect more on what the situation is. Just evaluate it, look at it, take the time to look at it. This is where like kind of yoga practices help, where you can look at something, sit with it, ask, maybe even write down what you think about that situation, and think, maybe you don't know everything that's going on, but you know only yourself. To look inside yourself and say, well, what if this is not true, what I initially thought? How would I react? And that's how you can catch yourself and say no. And the power of no is really about reflecting your own thoughts and where you want to go, where you don't want to go in life. It's really about putting yourself in a house of mirrors and saying, am I really going to move further if I smash that mirror? I'll feel like I'm in control of things, but I'm going to smash that thought, that mirror. But I challenge you to actually look in the mirror and ask yourself some of the questions that Byron Katie shares with us. Ask yourself, when there's a challenge and you need the power to say no, more to yourself, and ask yourself, is it true? Can you know it's absolutely true? How do you react? And who would you be without that thought? And within that, you can find the power to say no to someone else because something doesn't align with who you are and who you want to be and where you are in life right now, as well as yourself, to say no with your own reactions and just find more power in following the path that you need to be on with the proper amount of assertiveness. Because when we think of boundaries and assertiveness, we're always thinking about how to stop other people. But many times it's about asserting and putting boundaries on ourselves to either move in a certain direction because it alone will help us to move forward. And that could be with a job, because sometimes a job doesn't align with us any longer. And so for us, it's not about looking at other people and saying, oh, what's this boss or company? They don't care. They don't, just looking at them and getting frustrated. I challenge you to really look at yourself and realize, well, maybe this job and the work here doesn't challenge me anymore. It's, it's time to go. So don't look at being frustrated with other people and what that environment is. I challenge you to put that mirror in front of yourself and ask you, why is it you're frustrated? Is this the place that's aligned, that you are aligned to? And that's where you look inside and say, you know what, maybe it's just time for me to move on. And I know that can be so scary, but there's nothing worse than being in a place that you don't want to be in. And there is something worse when you're around someone else who doesn't want to be where they are, but they fear moving on. And then they share those fears and anxieties with everyone in the office. So don't be that person. When you feel frustrated about where you are at a job, in a relationship, it's up to you to put the mirror in front of yourself and learn how to say, time's up. I need to move on. I need to challenge myself. This no longer aligns with what I'm doing or where I want to be. And maybe you may need some therapy to move yourself through that. But for you to sit and say yes all the time to people and places that you don't want to be in, you want to just please people, that's not going to help you move through anything and to be happy and the champion in your own life. You're going to get much further if you be honest with yourself and tell yourself, no, you're going to move up and step up into where you should be. And then come outside and find the courage to say to others, this isn't going to work for me any longer. Or I don't want to go there because that doesn't, it could be a vacation. It could be, say, a group of riders. For me, sometimes I just say, no, I don't want to go on a short ride. That's usually what I do. I'm like, I want a long ride. Thanks for the invite, but I want the miles. I don't want to just sit there and have small talk. That's just not what I need. I want the hours. I want to ponder. I like to get my energy out. But it's up to us to embrace things and to be honest with ourselves. Otherwise, we're just going to be very unhappy and just anxious. But start with little steps in order to say no to maybe small invites to go places or to be in certain people's company. You know that they don't align with what you see. Maybe they did at one point. Sometimes who we know in high school or where we were when we were, in our 20s, maybe doesn't align with where we are now in our 30s or 40s or 50s. It's okay. Sometimes we need to let those old chapters close and allow new chapters to open. Sometimes no will be, the power of no is in just silence. It's not to react. It's just to move away from. And in that way, you can peel off layers of a mask that you wore for a while, but now you're done. This morning, I was thinking about Halloween. And one of the things we love about Halloween, especially as a kid, is we get to put on these outfits and feel like we are the heroes or the brave people, or that we see maybe on TV or comics or things in movies. But as a child, we know that once Halloween is done, we have to put away the costumes. But sadly to say, as we grow up and get older, sometimes we're not aware of the costumes that we're wearing because we allow them to become part of us, whether it's a job or a thing, a car, a bankroll, whatever it is. somehow we feel that we are admired by others, and for some reason, um, we put that costume on, that mask, and we don't want to put it down at the end of Halloween. We want to retain that. And I challenge you to every once in a while take a look at yourself and go in that house of mirrors and be vulnerable with yourself at who you are, who you want to be, where you want to go, and allow yourself to take off that costume and look at who you are. And it's not about being liked by other people, trying to please other people, your coworkers, your boss, your spouse, your parents, because people, it doesn't matter. Sometimes I see people in their 60s, they're still worried about thinking about what does a successful person look like. Well, it's whoever the people around them believe a successful person is about. It still is who their parents think what that looked like, and they still wear that costume in their 60s. So sometimes in order to put down those costumes and those old roles, we need to say no to ourselves, put them down, spend time alone, and ask ourselves, with a lot of mirrors around ourselves, is this really true, what I'm living in my life? Is this really what makes me happy and what's really good for my soul? And ask yourself, what if you didn't have those things? How would you be? What would your life be like? Many times in the hero movies that we watch, the hero's journey, or Spider-Man, Batman, but the real hero journey ones are like Star Wars, and what's another one? Oh, The Matrix. Think about The Matrix. The Matrix is very much about looking at a reality and saying, what is reality? And really looking close at what's going around you. And then having the power to take off that outer layer and really look at your truth and saying, no, I'm not going to buy into that falsehood. I'm not going to go along with someone else's plan because that's what they want to see. And with that, there's a lot of assertiveness in coming to terms with who you are and who you want to be. And on those heroes' journeys, it's all about looking at those different mirrors in the room with you. You know, what's true, what's false. And none of those heroes, when they first start off, they do things because to please other people. But by the end, over the course of the journey, it's all about learning about who you are, how to say no to what other people want to say and other people's fears, whether it's your boss or your parents or your spouse, their fears, and putting a no on pushing back their fears, because you ask yourself, are these really true things that they're worried about? And if they don't apply, then for you to find the power in taking that step back and the strength to let it go and saying no to yourself, that I'm not going to believe that fear-based goal. And maybe I'm going to walk away from something that is really not true. It's not what you need. You don't need that big house or that to be in that job because it looks good to other people. And I feel like I'm part of something. And that power to say no really takes a lot of internal awareness of what you need and what you don't need. So many times I find that the assertiveness is much gentler than we think. So I will see you next week. I am going to Laconia, and we will talk a little bit about, I might even do it on site. I'm not sure because I have to have Wi-Fi to do this live like this. But we are going to talk about kind of going with your own vibe instead of someone else's vibe and what that looks like. So I will see you next Friday. I'm not sure of the timing yet, but I'll be here to share with you some of that that I'll be enjoying on Laconia. I will not be taking videos or anything there. Yeah, bikers don't like that. So we don't take video. Bikers, we don't touch motorcycles of other people. There's a lot of things, but we are going to check out that. Well, I'll be checking out the scene next week. And you have a great week. Take care. In the meantime, give yourself the power to say no and enjoy your life. Take care.